WCW nWo Starrcade 98 took place on the 27th of December 1998 from the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. Just over 16,000 fans are inside the arena, while an estimated 460,000 fans bought the show on pay-per-view. This is down significantly from last year's Starrcade, of course, but it's still a very good number. Our main event features the undefeated Goldberg defending the World Championship against Kevin Nash, and in the semi-main spot we've got DDP looking for revenge against the Giant. Another match we're going to see tonight is Ric Flair versus Eric Bischoff, and Tony Schiavone lets us know that Bischoff has banned the Horseman from ringside. He will not compete unless Malenko, Anderson and Benoit are kept away from the match. Mean Gene says Steve McMichael got escorted out of the arena by police, so Bischoff's clearly getting ahead of the game before his big fight tonight. We'll hear from Flair and Bischoff later, but let's check out the opening match. It looks like a good one. Billy Kidman versus Juventud Guerrera versus Rey Mysterio Jr. for Kidman's Cruiserweight title. The Cruiserweights have shined bright on WCW Nitro, and while they're usually found at the beginning of our number 2 every Monday night, you can always rely on these guys to bring some action and excitement to the ring. Both Juventud Guerrera and Rey Mysterio are part of the LWO right now, but Rey joined up against his will. He has no issues fighting Guerrera in this match, as you can see right here. Juvi's already got himself a problem. If he takes out one guy, another guy's right there to make him pay for it. And we've even got Kidman helping Rey out to perform a Bronco Buster on his LWO teammate. As expected, this little friendship falls apart when one guy accidentally hits the other. Rey smacks Kidman and the Cruiserweight champion hands him a receipt right away. Juvi's enjoying this a bit too much though, so the babyfaces take Guerrera out before going back at it again. Kidman then puts Rey on his shoulders, Guerrera misses with a crossbody, so Kidman performs a reverse wheelbarrow suplex and Mysterio lands on Guerrera. We then see some excellent work by all three men that ends with the babyfaces taking a double bulldog, and Juventud tries covering both his opponents, but both his opponents kick out. Juvi stays on Rey and Kidman with a series of chops. More great work follows when Billy and Guerrera pass Rey around like he's a ragdoll, but this exchange ends in Juvi taking a clothesline and Kidman taking a big X-Factor facebuster. You can tell these guys went over this match in detail before bell time, and it's definitely paying off. This is already a really fun match. We then get some action on the outside with Rey getting backdropped and Guerrera performing a springboard crossbody. More double team moves follow in the ring with a double drop kick from Kidman and Rey, followed by a springboard Doomsday Rana by Juvi. You don't see that too often. Jesus, I feel like I need a break already. Kidman drop kicks Rey while giving Guerrera a DDT. He then misses a diving splash and Rey takes advantage with an Arabian Press moonsault. All three men get a breather after breaking up pin attempts, and Rey then hits Juvi with a springboard Hurricane Rana to the outside while Kidman hits a second rope leg drop on Mysterio. Juvi takes a falling powerbomb, Mysterio pulls off a sweet bulldog. Rey gets a chance to shine again with an Asai moonsault when it goes back to the outside, but the master of the 619 finds himself in trouble when he takes a Juvi driver back inside the ropes. Luckily for Rey, Kidman broke up the cover. Kidman takes an assisted Hurricane Rana from Mysterio, but he answers by planting Juvi with a BK bomb. Billy then goes upstairs and look at this, a shooting star press to the outside. This has to be the end of the match. Eddie Guerrero certainly thinks it's all over. The LWO's leader comes out and not only does he distract the referee, he also runs in to help Juvi cover Kidman. Rey Mysterio, however, dropkicks Juvi, and this allows Kidman to pin Guerrera and retain his Cruiserweight Championship. What a great opening match for Starrcade 98, and at least we know, no matter what happens later, we at least have one great match that makes the event worth revisiting. We aren't done yet though. Kidman's night is far from over. Eddie Guerrero rips into Juventud Guerrera for failing to win the Cruiserweight title. He says he can't believe these two LWO members failed to beat a cream puff and a pretty boy like Billy Kidman, and that Cruiserweight belt is supposed to belong to the LWO. He shoves Guerrera to the mat while calling him an embarrassment. He says Rey's supposed to be the best in the world, but he certainly didn't prove it tonight. So Eddie comes to the conclusion that if you want to get something done, you gotta do it yourself. He calls out Billy Kidman, he calls him a dweeb, and Eddie challenges Billy to a Cruiserweight title match. Billy comes out and he says there's no time like the present, and Eddie seems to hesitate a little when he says he needs to get his gear and he needs to prepare himself mentally. Billy says it's now or never. He says Eddie must be afraid, but Eddie says he'll do it. So here we go, another Cruiserweight title match at Starrcade 98. If you've been following Reliving the War recently, then you'll understand how awesome this is. The Cruiserweights have carried WCW from an in-ring perspective for a very long time, and it's good that so much pay-per-view time's being dedicated to the company's hardest workers. For all the flack this pay-per-view gets, this right here is absolutely fantastic. Eddie wants to finish the job early. He hits a clothesline followed by a powerbomb, but Kidman stays in it. He tries a quick inside cradle, but it's no good. Eddie then throws the champ in the air and Billy crashes hard on the mat, so maybe this defense wasn't such a great idea after all for Kidman. Juvi helps Guerrero during an abdominal stretch, but Mysterio puts a stop to this blatant cheating not once but twice. Eddie then goes out and he shoves Mysterio into the guardrail, and it looks like he's still annoyed with Juvi too. But all this lets Kidman recover and we see the catapult head scissor takedown. Kidman then gets vicious. He gives Eddie a beating on the mat, but Juvi's there again to help Eddie out. Kidman gets stretched as Eddie begins focusing on the knee, and Eddie lifts his opponent up only to put him down again with a European uppercut. On the outside, Guerrero gets another assist before Kidman gets his head rocked on the ring post. It goes back inside the ropes where Kidman surprises his opponent with a bulldog. Kidman then applies a sleeper, but it's broken up with a jawbreaker, and then we see Eddie untying his shoelaces. This can't be good. He takes a corner clothesline, but he uses this opportunity to remove his boot. Kidman gets smacked across the face while the referee's distracted. Eddie then asks for a timeout so he can put his boot back on, but he wastes way too much time and Kidman kicks out of the follow-up cover. A frog splash attempt gets stopped with a super kick from Billy Kidman. Eddie replies with a drop kick to the knee, and when Eddie tries to cheat, Ray hits him with his own boot. We see Kidman's facebuster counter from a powerbomb attempt followed by the slingshot leg drop, and our match ends when both guys go for top rope moves, but both men push each other off. Kidman has the opportunity to hit the shooting star, but Juvi crotches the champ on the top rope. So to get a little payback, Ray does the same to Eddie. The challenger falls in position, Kidman hits the shooting star press, and Kidman once again retains the Cruiserweight Championship. Fantastic stuff here. The crowd was engaged throughout both matches, and it's some of the best wrestling I've seen on a WCW pay-per-view in a very long time. I can't say enough good things about these two opening matches. Great work by all four men. Everyone says Starrcade 98's a rough show, but we just had two absolute bangers, and now we've got Norman Smiley. This is on track to be pay-per-view of the year. Norman's taking on Prince Iaukea tonight. These two met on Nitro and Norman got the win, so the Prince is looking a little redemption at Starrcade. He tried to steal an early victory and he paid for that little stunt by taking a few slaps from Mr. Smiley. A dragon screw then puts Norman on the mat while a dropkick sends him out of the ring, and I love how the Prince's body just kinda stopped in mid-air after performing this apron senton. Back in the ring, Iaukea gets slapped around again before Norman locks in a Kimura. It doesn't stay applied for long. A front suplex on the rope stuns Iaukea long enough for Norman to give us the big wiggle, you love to see it, and this gets followed up with the Smiley slam. The Prince gets up after a head scissor submission and he's eventually able to pull off a sunset flip, but Smiley kicks out before throwing Iaukea to the mat. Norman then performs a double stomp. After a suplex, we see that Norman can also dance while sitting down, a man of many talents. And Norman then pulls off a double underhook falling slam where he kept his opponent up in a vertical position for quite some time. Very impressive stuff. A drop toe hold gets followed up with another big wiggle, and it's getting over, guys. The fans pop for this more than anything else in the match, and Norman knows it too. So after stretching Iaukea out for a bit, he does it again. The match ends when the Prince hits a flying crossbody, but Norman rolls through. Iaukea then tries a backslide, and after a struggle, Norman's able to apply the Norman Conquest, and once again, Smiley defeats Prince Iaukea via submission. It's a big win for Norman, but the crowd were a little cold for this one. The matches at the start of the card certainly didn't help, and the guys had a real tough act to follow. Just like Starrcade last year, Scott Hall comes out to cut a promo. I'm guessing he'd already completed his contractual obligations for the year as far as pay-per-view matches are concerned. Paul, wearing an Outsider shirt by the way, says being in DC for the holidays is just too sweet. Scott says 98's been a tough year for him both in and out of the ring, but he's taken full responsibility. Tonight, a guy Scott looked up to as his big brother has an opportunity of a lifetime. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall travelled together for years and they always talked about what it would be like to become the World Heavyweight Champion. And even though people have been telling the bad guy he needs to prove himself to Kevin again and prove himself to the fans, Scott says the only person he needs to prove something to right now is himself. The bad guy can't wait to kiss 1998 goodbye, and he promises the fans that 99 will be Scott Hall's year. I do wish Scott was wrestling on this show, but there you go. Things are looking up for the Lone Wolf, it seems. Up next, Ernest Miller takes on the always impressive Saturn. Perry finally gets his hands on Miller after weeks of dodging from the Cat. Did you know that Ernest Miller's a 3-time World Karate Champion? Well, Sonny Ono's more than happy to repeatedly enlighten you on this fact as he accompanies the Cat down to the ring. Ernest graciously gives Saturn the opportunity to leave so his opponent can avoid a biblical beatdown. Isn't that nice of him? He turns his back and starts counting to 5, all the while Perry's winding up that big right hand. The Cat turns back around and Saturn smacks him right in the mouth. Ernest decides he doesn't want to deal with Perry tonight and he turns to walk back up the ramp. When Saturn has his back turned, the Cat sprints back to the ring to launch a sneak attack, but he comes up just a little bit short. I love this. Saturn lays in the boot, he takes Ernest to the corner and he lands 9 punches before the Cat once again escapes to the floor. The Cat then decides to extend his paw to Perry to make peace, but Saturn decides to kick Miller in the head instead. This was a wise choice. The Cat does gain advantage though as he pokes Saturn in the eye before sweeping him down to the mat and he applies a chokehold. He then chokes Saturn on the rope and he then chokes him again with his foot. It's not the deepest moveset the Cat's exhibiting here, which is reflected in the crowd's total lack of interest in this match so far. Saturn tries to retake control with a variety of pin attempts, but he can't score the win just yet. The Cat once again bails to the floor and seeks some advice from Sonny before getting back inside to talk trash to the referee. We eventually do see a new move out of the Cat as he scores with a kick underneath the chin of Saturn, but he decides to parade around the ring instead of going for the cover. He tries for another kick, but this time Perry catches it and the Cat gets dumped to the mat with a back suplex. Saturn then connects with a head and arm suplex before hitting a swinging neckbreaker. Perry then goes up top for a double axe handle, but the Cat avoids it and he connects with a standing sidekick, leading to both men going down to the mat. When they get back to their feet, Perry looks for an exploder suplex, but the Cat fights out and he connects with yet another standing sidekick. That's 3 chokes and 3 standing sidekicks, but I'm afraid that's not enough to get its own little graphic. Sorry, chin locks only, and maybe bear hugs, and maybe nerve pinches. The Cat holds Saturn and he invites Sonny into the ring to hit Perry, but imagine my astonishment when the plan backfires. Ernest is infuriated by Sonny's idiocy and he lays his manager out with a kick. He then turns right into Saturn, who scores with a Death Valley driver, and Perry wins the match via pinfall. Fair play to Saturn, he tried his best out there to make the Cat look good, but it just didn't work out too well, and the lack of noise from the crowd spoke volumes regarding the quality of this particular matchup. Mean Gene invites Ric Flair to the entranceway for an interview and Ric says we have finally arrived at Starrcade. Ric doesn't care about the Horseman being barred from ringside tonight. It doesn't matter because Bischoff's still going to get his ass kicked in the middle of the ring. Piece by piece, Ric's going to rip Eric apart. Bones are going to snap while Eazy-E's in the figure 4. And after all said and done, Bischoff's going to understand what it means to be a limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling and dealing son of a gun. Eric Bischoff pays the price at Starrcade and Flair's going to show his boss what tradition's all about. Backstage, Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell are looking for Konnan. They open a door and they find K-Dog playing with his little hat because he's got absolutely nothing better to do. Scott Steiner tells Konnan the Wolfpack's dead, and while Steiner told Lex Luger he wouldn't lay a hand on him, Konnan's a completely different story. Before things get physical, Lex runs in and he tells Buff and Scott to beat it. But Konnan isn't too happy with what's going on. He wonders if there's something he should know about, seeing as Lex is getting a free pass from the nWo Black and White. Back in the ring, we have the most random match on the card, and I've no idea at all why this was booked. Brian Adams and Scott Norton versus Fit Finlay and Jerry Flynn. Remember, Lex isn't booked on this show, neither Scott Hall, Scott Steiner, Raven, Kenyon, Wrath, Booker T, Alex Wright, Dean Malenko, or Chris Benoit. The tag team of Fit Finlay and Jerry Flynn is so out of place, and remember, this is Starrcade, not a throwaway episode of WCW Saturday Night. Absolutely no one cares, and the fans talk among themselves as the action plays out in the ring. There's no investment and no one for the fans to cheer for. Spots that are supposed to elicit a response get nothing, and in the end, the crowd end up applauding for the black and white when they win the match. I think folks just wanted it to end. Some great talent in there, without a doubt. Some great talent in Jerry Flynn. But this is the kind of match you book in GM mode when all your other wrestlers are injured and you have to put something out there knowing it's going to get a shit reaction. Norton gets the win with the powerbomb, and during the match, Tony Schiavone got word that tonight's Kevin Nash vs Goldberg main event is going to be a no disqualification match. Eric Bischoff then comes out for an interview and he says hi to Bill and Hillary before apologising to Ric Flair. He says sorry to Flair's family and he wants to set the record straight right here and right now. Bischoff's saddened that Rick wants to step into the ring tonight. Eric feels sorry for Rick's wife and kids because Flair's pushing himself beyond his physical abilities. The man has a bad heart, he's risking his own life by stepping into the ring with Eric, and he's doing it all for money apparently. Rick didn't save up his money, he's currently broke unlike Eazy-E. Eric says he himself's doing just fine, he travels by Learjet every Monday night and he spends the company's money while saving his own money. And Mean Gene says, Harvey, I hope you heard that at the end of the promo. It was a waste of time, to be honest. Our third title match of the evening sees Konnan defending the World Television title against Chris Jericho. The Ayatollah has possession of the physical belt, having taken it away from K-Dog on the Go Home episode of Nitro. Jericho grabs a mic and he says both he and Ralphus want to wish all his Jerichoholics a very happy Jericho holiday. He says that maybe he's just not hip enough to understand what Konnan says, but what he does know is that he's the women's pet, the men's regret, and the man with the voice and the Jerichoholics choice. The real TV champ then makes his way down to the ring and he runs through his usual mic routine, which the crowd in DC really get behind. Jericho gets the better of the champion in the early going, but Konnan turns the tide with a low dropkick to Jericho's face. The challenger is able to connect with a spinning heel kick, but he misses his top rope attack, leading to Jericho getting clotheslined over the top rope to the floor. K-Dog looks to attack from the apron, but Jericho sidesteps him and Konnan crashes into the guardrail. Jericho looks to utilise the ring steps, but instead he too gets acquainted with the guardrail just like K-Dog did. Chris does manage to throw the TV champ into the ring post though, before rolling him back inside and taking a moment to bask in the adulation of the Jerichoholics. The Ayatollah then hits a vertical suplex before going for his one-footed pin, which surprisingly doesn't get the job done. You know what will get the job done though? Yeah, that's right, a pay-per-view chinlock. At least it would have got the job done had he not transitioned into a sleeper, which allows Konnan to fight back to his feet. But K-Dog's quickly shut down as Jericho hits him with a knee to the midsection. K-Dog then gets choked in the corner before getting dropped with a body slam. Chris heads back up top, but he wastes way too much time and Konnan's able to get a boot up. Don't you just hate it when that happens? Konnan fires up by hitting his rolling lariat before planting Jericho with an Alabama slam for a near fall. Jericho regains the advantage with a jawbreaker and a clothesline before quickly springing off the middle rope with a lion salt, but he only gets a 2. Konnan rolls out to the floor and Jericho looks to springboard over the ropes after him, but Konnan moves out of the way and Jericho goes crashing into the ring steps he introduced earlier on. What goes around comes around, I guess. Back in the ring, Konnan looks to hit his K-Factor facebuster, but Jericho counters the move into the lion tamer. The champ prevents Jericho from turning him over, so the challenger instead catapults Konnan into the top turnbuckle. Jericho then charges at Konnan, but K-Dog moves out of the way and the champ goes on the attack, but he clips the referee in the process and Jericho takes advantage by grabbing the TV title and clobbering Konnan in the head with it. He then revives the ref. It looks like it's all over, but Konnan somehow kicks out at 2 and the fans are absolutely delighted. Konnan then counters Jericho coming back off the ropes and he's able to hit the K-Factor before locking in the Tequila Sunrise. Jericho taps out, Konnan retains the TV title and Konnan also reclaims the physical belt. Not a bad match at all. Both men have good chemistry together and the crowd were definitely into the match, so I give it a thumbs up. Ric Flair vs Eric Bischoff's up next. This rivalry is very personal and it all stems from Eric firing Ric earlier in the year. The firing was legitimate, by the way, it wasn't a storyline. Bischoff fired Ric for missing TV due to Ric wanting to attend his son Reed's amateur wrestling championship match, and things went from bad to worse when lawyers got involved. The two parties were able to come to an agreement and Flair returned to work, but Eric thought this was the perfect opportunity to build a storyline out of the real life events that went down between the two. Bischoff hasn't allowed Flair to compete in the ring since his return. This match is only happening because Dean Malenko won a match against Barry Windham with a little help from Dusty Rhodes. But things then got needlessly ridiculous when Flair had a heart attack on Nitro and Flair's kids got slapped around on Thunder by Eric Bischoff. This was unnecessary. There was already enough here in terms of storyline, but anyway, here we go. Bischoff walks down to the ring first, followed by Flair. The audience in Washington love the Nature Boy. Bischoff tries to dodge Ric and he's clearly afraid of what's about to happen, but Ric catches up and Bischoff takes a beating at the guardrail. Eric begs for mercy back inside the ropes and it looks like Flair's going to enjoy this. It goes to the corner where Eric takes a hard chop and on the mat the Nature Boy chokes his boss and he claws at his face before laying in a series of right hands. It's going exactly how you'd expect it to go, really. We see the signature Ric Flair knee drop before Bischoff gets punched in the face. Ric says that was for kissing his wife, and after a few boots in the corner, Eric goes down while favouring his knee. The Nature Boy smells blood, so he goes after the injured body part, but Eric was playing possum and Flair takes a kick to the head. Why Bischoff's now miraculously okay after the beating he took is a mystery. I know he was playing possum a minute ago, but that doesn't negate the beating he took beforehand. Ric gets his head rocked against the guardrail and the cameras focus on Eric back in the ring so Ric can do a blade job. This was very rare in WCW during this time period. When Ric gets in, Bischoff lays in a few strikes and what can you say really? Not the most elegant of in-ring performers, is he? Flair takes a few mounted punches and another kick to the head, but a low blow puts Eazy-E down and if that's not enough, Ric hits Eric on the nuts 2 more times. Flair says this is it brother before chopping Bischoff in the corner. The referee tries to gain some control but he gets tossed away by the Nature Boy. Eric's now in the Shattered Dreams position and there it is. Just like Barry Windham last week on Nitro, Bischoff's stick has completely perished. Eric takes a back suplex and a vertical suplex. The Nature Boy then locks in the figure 4 but there's no referee to check for a submission. Kurt Hennig, who we haven't seen on Nitro in quite some time, runs down and he hands something to Eric. It's those brass knucks that don't look like brass knucks, but we'll call them brass knucks anyway. And Eric Bischoff wins the match after smacking Flair on the head with the illegal weapon. An absolutely horrible ending to a pretty dire match. Flair and Bischoff had great heat going into this one, and with the exception of the heart attack nonsense and Flair's kids getting involved, the storyline they had going in was solid and it wrote itself. But having the two compete in a match at Starrcade wasn't the best way to go about continuing the feud in my opinion, and having Bischoff win at Starrcade was also a giant misstep. It's time for our semi-main event as the Giant of the NWO takes on Diamond Dallas Page. A few weeks ago on Nitro, DDP defended his US title against Bret Hart in an ODQ match. During the bout, the Giant attacked DDP and he led him out with a pair of chokeslams, the second one coming off the top rope, and this allowed the Hitman to become US champion once again. DDP would get some retribution by attacking the Giant with a steel chair, but the Giant would repay that favour by chokeslamming Page through the Nitro stage. The big man's out first, and the commentators put over how much more devastating the Giant's chokeslam is compared to other folks who used it over the years, simply due to the man's sheer size. DDP makes his entrance, immediately heading towards the side of the stage to get up close and personal with the fans. He even climbs on top of the table at the internet location while being careful not to disconnect the modem. The last thing he wants to do is interrupt Lee Marshall's no doubt questionable downloads. Dallas gets in the ring, Giant talks some trash before spitting his gum at Page. There's no need for that, big lad. And yeah, Page spits back at the Giant. There's even less need for that now, come on. DDP uses his quickness to take advantage in the early going, connecting with a number of right hands before looking for the diamond cutter. Giant avoids it, but he can't avoid being clotheslined over the top rope to the floor. Page looks to throw Giant into the ring steps, but the big man uses his size advantage to put a stop to that and he counters with a big clothesline. A headbutt from the 7-footer sends Page over the guardrail into the front row. He then looks to lay in a big right hand, but Page grabs a nearby garbage can and the Giant punches that instead. Page then hits the Giant over the head with the trash can, but he can't keep the advantage. DDP gets pulled into the ring post twice before getting pressed over the Giant's head, and DDP gets tossed back into the ring. Dallas immediately grabs his left knee, and the Giant zeroes in on the body part, dropping a series of elbows and driving his own knee into the injured leg. Giant then locks in a submission on the knee as Page tries to fight back, eventually having to resort to going to the eyes of the big man, but a chop in the corner puts DDP right back down again. Dallas again tries to fire up, but he gets shut down with a clothesline in the corner from the world's largest athlete, and the Giant then gives us a ticket to the gun show immediately afterwards. The pace of this one is slowed way down as the Giant stays in control, and it completely grounds to a halt as the Giant locks in a bear hug, which lasts for quite some time. Go grab a snack. Dallas once again fights back to his feet and he attempts another diamond cutter, but he gets cut off in a big way as the Giant delivers a massive power slam. He decides he doesn't want to pin Dallas just yet, so he instead picks him up and he puts him in another bear hug. Fantastic. After another seemingly endless struggle, DDP's able to bite the Giant's nose to free himself before going for a sunset flip. That doesn't go according to plan as the big man picks Page up from the mat by the throat and he chokeslams Page down across his knee. This looked absolutely devastating and the crowd popped big for it too. Giant sends Page into the ropes, but Dallas is able to counter an attempted hip toss with a DDT. He makes the cover, but the Giant's powerful kickout sends DDP crashing into the referee. This is the cue for US champion Bret Hart to hit the ring with a steel chair in hand. His Excellency looks to whack DDP, but Page moves out of the way and the Giant gets clobbered by mistake. Page then takes Bret out with a low blow, but his follow-up cover on the Giant only gets a 1. Page then hits a pair of top rope clotheslines before signaling for the cutter, but he instead goes back up to the top rope. What are you doing, Dallas? He comes flying off, but he gets caught by the waiting hand of the Giant who places DDP on the top rope. Looks like we're going to see the slam dunk again. He lifts Page up off the turnbuckle, but Dallas is able to counter in midair into a diamond cutter. That was awesome. He drapes an arm across the big man, and what do you know, DDP slaying the Giant tonight at Starrcade. A bit of a weird match this one. It did have some really good moments, such as that huge power slam, the chokeslam backbreaker and the diamond cutter at the very end, but there's only so many times that the underdog can fight back before it gets a bit tedious too. Cutting a few minutes off this one would have made it a lot better, but it was still a decent bout overall. Kevin Nash won the World War III Battle Royal, and so he's got himself a match against the undefeated Bill Goldberg tonight at Starrcade. The commentators say the streak's at 173 wins and 0, but if you watched the past episode of Reliving the War, you'd know this number was incorrect. But anyway, the feuds move forward with Bam Bam Bigelow getting added to the mix. Bam Bam's been showing up over the past 2 months or so, while Big Nash has been saying the world champ's losing his focus. Apart from that, there really isn't much else here in terms of overall storyline. Bam Bam Bigelow's involvement has been moving things along, and it's strange that WCW decided to bring Bigelow in as the focal point of this rivalry, rather than have all eyes on Nash and Goldberg. Big Sexy looks extremely confident and extremely calm as he makes his entrance. The big man's looking good tonight. Goldberg gets his usual security entrance, and he even stops this time to sign a kid's shirt. Why is that kid walking around backstage, and where's his parents? Goldberg then marches down to the ring and he too looks ready to go. The entrance is brilliant, but the pyro completely smokes the arena out, and you'd think Warrior and Booty Man were in the back having a good time. But here we go, the undefeated Goldberg against the Wolfpack's Kevin Nash. It's time for the Starrcade main event. The two pace around the ring and Nash plays mind games by raising his arms in the air. Goldberg does the same thing and the crowd are cheering for both guys, so we have a split audience as the match begins. The two lock horns, Goldberg overpowers Nash, the referee jumps in before things get a bit rough. The two circle the ring again, they lock up, Nash applies a side headlock but Goldberg powers out with a back suplex. A few Goldberg sucks chants can be heard here, but the champ seems undeterred. After a brief timeout, Nash gets back in the ring and the crowd are making a lot of noise here. The challenger puts the champ on the mat following a few blows before it goes to the corner where Kevin lays in the knee strikes. Big Sexy lines up a back elbow before choking Goldberg with his big boot, but the champ powers out of the corner and he takes Nash down for a few punches. Goldberg then applies a chokehold and Nash counters with a cross arm breaker. That's something you don't see too often from Big Sexy. The champ breaks free and he applies a leg lock, but Kevin makes it to the ropes, and now it's Goldberg's turn for some corner offense. A big right hand in the middle of the ring puts Kevin on his ass, and Goldberg's feeling pretty confident now, though that confidence gets shook a little when Nash throws the champ into the middle turnbuckle and he follows this up with a foot choke. Nash picks Goldberg up, he throws him into the ropes, and there it is, the spear. This one should be all over. Goldberg signals for the jackhammer, but a dick punch puts Goldberg down and Nash now has a chance to win this thing. Big Kev pulls off his signature sidewalk slam, he only gets a 2, so Nash drops an elbow on his opponent, but again it's only a 2. Nash tries a leapfrog body guillotine, but the follow-up cover yields the exact same results, and a back elbow fails to put Goldberg down, but a big clothesline does the job. Nash just can't put Goldberg away. He goes for a suplex and Goldberg counters with a spinning neckbreaker. Big Kev then takes a double underhook power slam and Goldberg wipes Nash out with a standing sidekick. The champ goes for a cover after another power slam, but Nash kicks out. So Billy Boy hits a spinning heel kick, and this is where the match ends. Disco Inferno, who's been trying to prove himself worthy of joining the Wolfpack, hits the ring and he gets taken out with a spear from Goldberg. Bam Bam Bigelow then attacks the champ, but Goldberg takes care of him too. And then Scott Hall jumps on the apron and he pushes a kettle prod into Goldberg's chest. Apparently Goldberg wanted to use a taser right here along with a taser dart, but WCW wouldn't allow it. But still, the champ's been stunned long enough for Kevin Nash to hit him with a jackknife, and the streak comes to an end. Kevin Nash wins the World Championship in the Starrcade main event. Loads of discussions been had about this main event, and I don't want to get into all that backstage nonsense about this decision, but I will say this: in my opinion, Goldberg's World Championship run was horrible and it was definitely time to move the belt onto someone else. And I say that as someone who doesn't hate Goldberg the way everyone else seems to nowadays. The match here wasn't absolutely terrible either, but that's only in comparison to other Goldberg matches of this era. It's certainly not a great Starrcade main event, but the crowd went crazy for Nash winning the championship. This whole event gets a bad rep for sure, and that's because everyone thinks of the finish to Nash vs Goldberg. It's not a brilliant show, but WCW have put on way worse pay-per-views in 1998. The Cruiserweights absolutely killed it in the two opening matches. Konnan vs Jericho and Jan vs DDP weren't bad matches at all either, so Starrcade 98's definitely worth checking out for those matches. The tag team encounter was pure filler, Bischoff and Flair was terrible, and the main event may be a little controversial in terms of how it ended, but the crowd were really into it, and for a Goldberg match, it wasn't horrible. The undefeated streak is ended, and that opens up the doors for storytelling options when it comes to Bill Goldberg. Now it's time to see if WCW can make the most of it and do something more than having the guy run through everyone in 2-minute squash matches. It looked like Big Kev didn't expect any help from Disco or Scott Hall either, so join me next week on the channel and we'll see what happens next. Thank you very much for watching the final pay-per-view review of 1998. That's the whole year covered, and hopefully I'll see you on Thursday for Reliving the War. Take care.